Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to the second and penultimate episode of the Connected CIO web series on the theme Work Reimagined Remote Workspace in 2020 and Beyond. In partnership with Dell Technologies, Strategink is delighted to present you all a mini web series that is focused on the imperatives of a reimagined reality, remote workplaces, and a remote workforce. So, ladies and gentlemen, with the change in work models, how should organizations change the way they view device modernization? Well, what is new guidance to changing the way the workforce interacts with devices? The focus must be on why device transformation is critical starting point of workplace transformation. So today, episode 2 will focus on the adoption of digitized approaches to enable scaling of learning programs in a more cost-effective way, while permitting greater personalization for learners and in return, greater effectiveness. It will also delve into the key facets of how organizations should evaluate business benefits of endpoint refresh and what the new device lifecycle management best practices will actually look like. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as before, can you please do stay with us till the very end because your feedback form and your business mail IDs will get you a complimentary copy of a very useful strategic action checklist on today's webinar episode theme and topics. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned. We will shortly commence our first segment, In Focus, which will have industry leaders sharing their experience around business and workplace transformation.
Hello and good morning. My name is Arjun Vishwanathan and I'm the Chief Research Officer at Strategink. And you joining us today on episode 2 of our web series called Work Reimagined, Remote Workspaces in 2020 and Beyond. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the change in work models, how organizations should change the way they view modernization of entire enterprises. Classically, what should be the new guidance to changing the way that the workforce interacts and the crossplay between transformation, technology, and human capital? And joining me today to talk about this and a lot more, please join me in welcoming Vikas Majumdar, Head of Digital Innovation and Collaboration at the Aditya Birla Group. Vikas, welcome, good morning. Privileged that you could join us here.
Good morning, Arjun. My privilege to be on this session.
Vikas, you just heard the opening comments that I kind of made about the crossplay and the convergence of human capital and technology. Now, in classically, what are fairly reimagined realities? And if the first half of this year has really taught us something, what, according to you, would be those 3 or 4 maybe key learnings that you are going to put into practice and your guidance, therefore, for industry to put into practice to truly combat disruption in the future and to drive a more agile enterprise?
Absolutely, Arjun. So, very interestingly for me, digitalization, digital transformation, in a sense, has always been a way of life, right? Having built many businesses that were literally digital first or digital born, it's really just a way of life and not something that is brand new or something that we are aspiring to become. Having said that, for many other businesses who are traditional in a sense of the word, I think digital transformation, although it sounds like a buzz phrase now, is absolutely the way to go. And I know efforts and everybody has been talking of digital transformation for almost the last maybe, 9 to 12 months, quite actively. But I think in the last 6 months, it's taken on a whole new meaning. Digital transformation, first of all, it's not a nice to have anymore, it's a must have. And the second thing is that I think you've got to go about it now in a much more organized manner, right? So the way I look at it, right, to derive the maximum value from your workplace and workforce, even in these times, I think you've got to do a layered approach to digital transformation, right? So first, get your core in place, just like they talk about in body or fitness training. Get your core in place, right? And what is the core? Core is get your infrastructure right, be it on-premise, be it on the cloud. Get your core enterprise applications right, and get your data and data strategy right. Right? These three things are core, what I call the core. You get that right, and you're on your way to your path of digital transformation. So subsequently, I think there's just too many technologies today. So let me summarize it: is that technology is the way to go, right? I
Indeed.
mean, there are now just too many technologies that were previously in the realm of research labs and high-end, very rich organizations. Obviously, the AI, ML kind of things that have now become available to everyone. So I think technology is the way to go. You must leverage technology. Uh, don't use technology for technology's sake.
Sick.
Use the right technology, decide what is useful to you. Please don't go by buzzwords. Please don't go by what is written in the media as the hype, but we have to select what's right for us. And if you do that, I think, it's, and very frankly, to some extent, it's nothing to do with the current pandemic situation. I think this is the need of the future regardless. I think the pandemic is only pushing us into it faster. That's my view.
Very, very interesting, very, very powerfully made point. But my question equally, in as a derivative of this is really because has the last has this experience really shown us that the whole concepts of the workforce by themselves are changing in terms of the fact that we're increasingly tending to look at new jobs, new roles, new tasks. Now, in that kind of a scenario, how do you kind of navigate the workforce through what clearly promises to be a fairly complex journey?
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely good question. Really, and your question is itself is very powerful because the key to any of this transformation happening, although I said technology before, technology is the enabler,
Indeed.
and without people, without the right mindset, I don't think just technology can solve our business problems or our life problems for that matter, right? So I think it's important for the workforce, right, to understand this, right? Now, I think very positively. I don't believe that technology is out there to make the human workforce redundant. I think it's there to make their lives either simpler or simply have them produce better and more. It's not that you have to stay the way you are. You can produce better cars, you can produce better audio equipment, better computers, and you can use technology to help you do that. So what does the workforce need to do for that is reskill and adapt, right? I mean, that's nothing else other than that. If you refuse to understand the way the technology is moving, if you think this is not for you and you can continue the way you are with the skills that you already knew, if you challenge these kind of transformations, I think, well, then you've got a big problem.
Then you've got a big
But
problem.
other than that, as long as you can convince, and let me say something that I personally feel, right, that the last 6 months, I find that the way people have adapted. See, coming from an IT background, work from home, remote meetings, remote calls are a way of life for us. So I didn't feel anything different in the last 6 months. Maybe a little too much of it, but not very different.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. But having said that, I find that people in other walks of life or other businesses, let's say manufacturing, very traditional normally, I think they adapted to this very well. And if that is a sign for the future, I think we are well on our way because the way people have adapted to, let's say, something as simple as doing video calls and conferences, if they can adapt in the same way to new technology that's coming, we've got like, the sky is the limit from there on.
So therefore, which brings me to, well, to genuinely inquire from you as to how challenging has it been to drive collaboration and perhaps enhanced measures and modes of productivity within the workforce, not just over the last 6 odd months where we've kind of been stuck at home, but also perhaps going forward. Have some learnings come in that will help us measure productivity in differential manners? Will we look at collaboration in a renewed with a renewed set of lens, perhaps? What's your view on that?
Absolutely. And here I'm maybe going to put a little contrarian view to some extent. See, collaboration is has many dimensions, right? Now, just getting on to see the very age-old form of collaboration is, of course, email collaboration slash communication. Absolutely the foundation. Today, we believe that we are collaborating well by getting on video and conference calls. But I don't actually, then that's my contrarian view. I don't think that's the answer, right? Video and conference calls are just enablers. To some extent, as we all know, they actually a drain on productivity.
Indeed, indeed.
So I think the time has come to explore a lot more meaningful collaboration tools. I mean, let me give you very just top of the head examples. For example, using communication boards or forums, social media kind of platforms that are built for the enterprise. So it's not like you send an email, you miss a few people. I've got 100 emails today, so I don't read them. But this is much more collaborative. You use collaborative whiteboards. Yeah, you use processes and tools like Kanban boards to do project management. Now, these kind of tools, they've been around for the longest time. So nothing that I'm saying is new. But I personally feel that adoption in some markets, in some businesses, is actually very, very low, and it's below my expectation. So I think these are the kind of collaboration tools. If we start to use, then I think productivity can not only be measured because the contribution is very evident, right? It can also be, it will just improve because even if I have to work remotely, if I have all these tools, my productivity is just normally going to improve. So I think we've got to think beyond these video conferences and emails. Those are done to death, and that's not really the answer. That's my view on collaboration.
Therefore, Vikas, I must ask you is when you when well, and I'm going to ask you this question in the form of a cliche.
Mm-hmm.
Is we keep talking about enterprise modernization, infrastructure modernization, device modernization. What truly does modernization mean when you look at it from an entire enterprise perspective, number one? And number two, how do you truly embed modernization and the concepts of adaptability, adoption, change of mindsets into the very fabric of the enterprise, the digital enterprise perhaps? So, and I can see for the fact that you're at a very vantage point where you have a diverse spectrum view of organizations and functions and departments. How do you kind of see it from where you sit?
So enterprise modernization, and I will answer it with two very age-old cliche technology solutions, but to date, they are the foundation. One is cloud, the other is mobility. Okay, two very, very old terms and technologies. They are now superseded by digital transformation and similar buzzwords. But today, being on the cloud, where I literally have zero physical files on my physical computer, has made my life so seamless. Any document from anywhere.
From anywhere.
I mean, you will not believe the kind of productivity enhancement that brings about, right? So these are the kind of things. Productivity is not just automatically going to be enhanced, but you give me wherever I am, even if I'm at home, I'm outside, I'm on my phone, the same document, the same emails, the same seamless experience. So, and not to be honest, I mean, not that I'm trying to sell the cloud or anything like that. But to be honest, this is enabled by the cloud.
It is.
For me, the cloud and the kind of infrastructure as a service.
Yes, where credit is due. Absolutely.
I mean, that to my mind personally, that has been the single change factor. So mobility and cloud, right? And obviously all of the supporting infrastructure needs to be in place. For example, I would say today that any enterprise apps that you may have, right? Whether it's the operations staff that looking at it, or whether it's senior management that's simply reading dashboards and reports, yeah, make sure all of it is on the cloud and mobile enabled. At no point should you say that I need to have my laptop, I need to be on the VPN, or I need to be on the same office network. The moment you start saying that, you are building in artificial limitations.
True.
And
true.
technology is there to allow you this. Of course, security is a big concern.
Indeed.
So therefore, that's one more of the foundational areas you need to take care of. But other than that, go mobile and go on the cloud.
Very, very interesting. Because so I will come to you with an anecdotal set of points, which in my conversations also with industry CIOs and so on and so forth. You see, once the kind of lockdown really hit us, the initial few days was essentially making sure people were portable, therefore they had the right tools or the device and so on and so forth. But then came a secondary challenge where a lot of my CIO folks that I was speaking with kind of mentioned saying, look, we've given them the laptops, but now they're saying my device is not equipped to kind of help me perform my role to the best possible extent. Uh, Obviously, given that realities were kind of very, very different, how do you kind of look at something like that? Because the audience that's sitting with us is equally very curious to understand how industry leaders such as yourselves kind of look at this possible challenge or an issue, if I may be allowed to.
So I find that a very interesting situation, and maybe my previous point, and I'm going to add a little to one more dimension to that, should address this completely, and that's my personal experience, right? So since everything I do is on the cloud, right? There's no reason for me to say my laptop is not fully equipped, because any tool that my enterprise has a license for, I have access to. Therefore, if you ask me, if at all I have a constraint, right, and some of the developments in the telecom industry are therefore, for me personally, extremely interesting. I need a super high speed internet connection, because with high bandwidth and access to all my applications on the cloud, I really don't see, and interestingly, it also removes my dependency on my device.
Indeed.
I can use my laptop. Let's say, God forbid, my laptop, stops working. I can use someone else's laptop in my family. So imagine that seamlessness. So to be very honest with you, I am not very sure why someone would have that experience unless they were extremely local and on-prem.
Perhaps.
So I don't have the software installed. I don't have, let's take Office, let's not get very sophisticated. Today, so if I work on my personal Mac, right? And I don't have the enterprise Office license on my Mac, that's on my Windows laptop, right? But Excel online, PowerPoint online, so seamless, maybe they're slightly limited in their features. But can I say I can't do a PPT? Can I say I can't do an Excel sheet? No, I can't. So therefore, if you are in that space of having enterprise applications on the cloud, I find it really difficult to imagine where one would be constrained. So it ties back to my previous point as well.
Indeed, and very, very interesting, because I'm going to come to you with a fairly largish, expansive question now, Vikas, is how do you kind of see the entire concept, the future of work panning out? Given that it's been a term that's been oft touted over the last at least 24 months, but has actually been somewhere brought made very clear and present over the last 6-7 months now. The future of work, what exactly, how do you envision the real concepts of the future of work in its actual implementation, in its actual application within organizations?
I mean, yeah, it is extremely expansive. So I'll give you a slightly expansive answer as well. But, very interestingly, I tend to mentally myself personally classify workplaces into about 3 categories. I mean, I'm not saying that's a very precise classification, but for my own benefit. One is the traditional office, where the general corporate office environments, the desk jobs, etc. Two is the manufacturing space, the factories, the workspaces, and so on. And the third for me is the retail/services spaces.
Indeed.
These are also workplaces for people, right? And in fact, those are the customer touch points, right? So I think these 3 categories are going to have to be handled and dealt with separately, right? What works, and see, everything that we talked about so long, right, including work from home, is largely for these kind of offices, right? I mean, what's the point of this conversation for a shop floor worker, right?
Indeed.
What's the point of this conversation for a retail salesperson? So I think, first of all, you have to categorize into the types of workforces that you have. Let's take the first one. And one more contrarian statement, you'll hear a lot of those from me. And I'm going against the investor giants and the greats like SoftBank. So it's, it's I don't know whether it's right for me, but I believe that WeWork, has a brilliant model, right? Whether they're doing it right or not from a revenue perspective, that's not my call. But imagine satellite offices, imagine co-working spaces in general. Let me not say WeWork, but I love WeWork, so plug for them. Co-working spaces. Imagine if I have satellite offices within 5-kilometer, 10-kilometer radiuses, and
solves about 1 million problems.
Exactly, because work from home is not. I mean, it's not practical for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone has large enough houses. And
Indeed.
2 people working, could be 3 people working, so it's tough. So that's a solution for maybe the corporate office kind of an environment. So that's actually the easiest in my opinion. Let me go a little bit to manufacturing. Yeah. And now I think this is where the new technologies can come into play. So emerging technologies like IoT, and when I say IoT, it's used rather loosely, but sensor-based solutions that feed data into a remote management center, right? So, and this is not new technology. It's just not been applied well. For example, air traffic control, right? I mean, people have been remotely monitoring flying planes for donkeys years now. So imagine the same thing, right? So imagine a factory shop floor that I don't necessarily have to be there. Imagine adding AI/ML solutions for predictive maintenance, right? So I don't have to be there to watch. Imagine adding here also, imagine adding the AR/VR solutions.
Indeed, indeed.
AR/VR solutions are actually used extensively, for example, and I love the aviation industry. So in aircraft repair, right? So I can be remote and I can guide someone to fix something. I don't have to be physically present. So these are the kind of solutions to change the workplace for the manufacturing kind of a business. Moving to the third category, which is retail or services, I think again technology is going to help, right? For example, retail. Again, AR, VR, where you can give the customer a remote experience of shopping, of feeling their products, and so on. That can help me. So maybe I don't want to always browse and spend a lot of time browsing in the store. So I do my homework, I experience things in real life, and then I go to the store and shop, but I spend a little less time there.
The hybrid retail
Right?
model,
The
so to say.
hybrid model. So again, technology there, whether it's for safety reasons in the current situation or even to improve customer experience.
Indeed.
Not everyone likes that experience of going into a store. I personally don't. So if you give me that real experience of being able to touch, feel with AR, VR solutions, you've got me as a customer. I'll still
Yeah,
go
so
there to buy
Lenskart
it.
is a great example, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, Lenskart, and if they further evolve that, and you do that in fabric, you can do that in furniture.
Actually.
I mean, there's no limit to that. So I think
Outstanding.
the workplace of the future has to be divided up like this into a few categories, and each of them will come with its set of technologies, set of technology solutions. The core for all remain the same, right? The
Indeed.
foundation that I talked about, but layer these, and these are now also customer-facing solutions. And when I say customer, they could be an end customer, or even your workforce to some extent is your customer, right? I mean,
Indeed.
in manufacturing, one of my favorite areas is voice control, right? Imagine voice controlling everything, right? I don't have to touch too many things. It's safe even in general. Yeah, I don't go near, hot and moving equipment. I just speak out
Speak
my
it out and then
commands.
it
Right?
kind of
So
gets its
all of
job
these
done.
kind of solutions are going to be the workplace of the future.
No,
And
very
things that I'm
interesting.
saying, sorry, I mean, just to clarify, things that I'm saying in many advanced countries and some advanced factories are already in place.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
we just have to start adapting, or adopting.
No, because it's very interesting that you say this, and I do have, while I do have a view on the clock, I do have time to ask you this very, very important question, really, because is that has the experience of the last 6, 7 months and perhaps renewed or altered our concepts of innovation? Do you think that innovation today has absolutely new meaning as compared to how we used to look at it earlier on in life?
I mean, absolutely. And I hope what my experiences applies to everyone. And I'll tell you why. It's a very interesting thing that I will have to say to this. This whole situation, right, I'll speak from little personal experience,
Indeed.
had made us innovate or think innovatively in our day-to-day lives.
So
Some of
true.
the things that we do today, who imagined that I would ever need to do that?
Indeed.
And for the first month, you did it by brute force, maybe,
Yeah.
right? The second month, you started to think of optimizing the way you did it because you got a little tired doing it every day. By the third month, we've got all these innovative solutions floating around that solve your own personal problems. So now, innovation is not just a buzzword. I think all of us are applying it in our day-to-day lives. And
Indeed.
to
Indeed.
transition from that to applying it to your business, to applying it to your workplace, I think it's just a simple step forward. So to answer your question, yes, I think this is really, really, pushed the culture of innovation into people's minds, is my belief. I hope I'm right. And I really hope that continues. We shouldn't go back to the old way of
Yeah,
thinking.
certainly not. We shouldn't. Yeah, that risk, and if we actually do that, will be the greatest travesty
Exactly.
to
I mean, the
what's truly
opportunity
been
in a
a
crisis kind of.
unfortunate but God-given opportunity to actually transform and change.
Absolutely. I mean, like they say, an opportunity in a crisis. So that's
Indeed.
what we've got to take out of this.
But well, that's pretty much what I have time for. But I do have time to sneak in one question. Vikas Mujumdar, I must ask you uh, one or two great lessons over the last few months, or even in your fairly varied career, that has kind of always stuck with you. It could be personal, it could be professional, but certainly one or two learnings that you had either personally or professionally especially in these last 6, 7 months, that will kind of stick with you for a long, long time to come? We're trying to get to know the man behind.
Well, so coming from technology, right? One clear learning, and it only gets reinforced as the years go by, is never technology for technology's sake, right? I remain very, very excited about so many of the modern technologies that are coming out, right?
Indeed.
And you're so keen to push that into business, but you just step into their shoes and you start to think about ROI and you start to think about the time they will invest. It's important for them to know that. So it's important for us as technologists to have that view, right? And with that view, you're likely to sell more, if I may say that, right? So sell a solution better, sell a solution more. So that's one takeaway. And a second takeaway on a personal front, I think, is the importance, and I'll say this as a personal front, the importance of social interaction. Yeah, you take it for granted. I have never missed that so much in my life. In my entire
Much
life,
as
I
we
have
have
never been
now.
so isolated. So you read about isolation, but I mean, although I know it's not real isolation, but still,
True,
yeah,
but
isolation from your team, separation from your office space. So I think the importance of social interaction, which I didn't attribute that much value to, has suddenly taken a significant importance to me. I think these are
that
my
is
two,
so,
one
so true.
professional, one personal. So
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't thank you enough for a brilliant conversation, a brilliant dialogue, Vikas. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Vikas Majumdar, Head of Digital Innovation and Collaboration at the Arts Birla Group. Vikas, it has been nothing short of a privilege to have had this dialogue with you. I've learned so much. Thank you so much, sir.
thank you, Arjun. Very happy to have spoken with you.
Lovely. To the audience, stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment. Hello, I am now live for the question answer session with Vikas Majumdar. And we've been getting questions from across the board. We've got questions on the platform. I've personally got questions from a couple of friends in the industry. People who are connected to me on WhatsApp have also sent it to me. We can't, of course, take all the questions, ladies and gentlemen, but there is one very, very interesting one that I am going to pick up. I'm going to keep it anonymous for the time being, but because somebody from industry says, now that we are not getting into physical office spaces really, have we kind of forgotten the boundaries of time and space? Therefore, coming to a point where while work certainly starts at a certain point of time during the day, it doesn't seem to have an end, because as long as my device is booted on, I'm sitting here, I don't have to travel, my tea or coffee or my dinner can come to the table. Are we kind of doing ourselves a disservice by not putting a conscious stop to work, but just continuing because we have the ability to do so? This is the question, of course. What's your take on this?
So I think people addressing everyone who's in this space, right? I think you should use this to your advantage. And I'll tell you what I mean by that is, so you're right. I too start probably log in at 7, and I literally, I mean, not to say how many hours I work, but I sometimes shut down back at 11 or 12 at night, right? But very honestly, right? It's not that I work for 14 hours. You take a break when you think you need a break. And I find that to be actually a great advantage over working in office. And why is that, right? See, the human mind, two things. One is can be productive only up to a point. It does get tired. So a break is very useful. And the second thing is creativity, especially if you're in a space where you need to think creatively. You cannot force yourself to think creatively from 9 to 6. Ideas sometimes come at 11, ideas sometimes come at 7 in the morning. So what's wrong?
Indeed.
Yeah, what's wrong? And in the office, this is frowned upon. But I'm saying what's wrong in actually taking your break from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, because that's your slowest mental
That's
cycle.
the slowest time.
Yeah. And getting back at 7 in the morning or 9 at night, whichever is your highest cycle. To my mind, actually, it translates into much higher overall productivity.
Indeed.
So don't count the hours. Use it in this manner. In fact, I mean, if I say this in a joke, fortunately, no one's monitoring you now. If you take a small afternoon siesta, use it to your advantage.
Indeed, and I think that is something I certainly am going to be putting into practice. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the live Q&A session. That's what we have time for. Thank you. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Vikas, thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, Arjun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are sure you're enjoying yourself. We now commence our next segment, Innovation Diaries, Devices at the Speed of Thought, where we will hear eminent industry leaders share their experiences and guidance on navigating workplace transformation and enterprise resilience.
Hello and welcome back. I am Arjun Vishwanathan, and I today am going to be in conversation with an industry leader par excellence. Please join me in welcoming Dragana Biera, Global Messaging Director, Immersive Technologies and Augmentation at Dell Technologies. Dragana, delighted you could join us today all the way from Singapore. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Arjun. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And for the audience, now we are going to be in conversations on the changing work models, how organizations are perhaps mandated to view enterprise modernization equally from the point of view of experience modernization for employees, contractors, and partners. To kind of take this forward, Ragnar, I am going to come to you with the very first question is, if the first half of 2020 really, and it has been quite the year, the first half of 2020 has been quite not what was initially imagined. But within this at its foremost, what's been a fairly global human tragedy, it's also been an opportunity and tons of learnings and lessons for us, if I could kind of put it that way. In your experience over the last 6-7 months, Ragnar, and with your very wide canvas of operations, what really have been your lessons from an industry perspective?
Wow, that's a big question. Do we have 2 hours? It's been an interesting experience, I think, especially here in Asia, where a lot of people have not been in remote work settings in the past. So it was quite a bit of, I think, a culture shock, both to the employee base as well as the management, trying to figure out how do you keep the momentum going, how do you keep people motivated, how do you keep people from being scared, how do you remain engaged in these remote setups. Not everybody had a great setup for home, not everybody had the space or the quietness, right? And so looking after some of those very immediate and very human needs was, I think, a priority for most. I know that at Dell Technologies, we've had a number of senior management weekly calls, and our own personal managers were checking in with everybody to make sure that how we're doing as people. Are we okay? Are we scared? Are we sick? Do we have family members we need to care for? And I think that definitely humanized the workplace in a big way. We started seeing other people's homes, other people's children, family members, pets. And that, I think, is a positive, actually, despite the difficulty of trying to find a way to stay productive. Technology was definitely a big enabler. And it was definitely something that people who have considered remote working programs prior to this situation definitely had a huge return on their investment paid up front right away, while others were probably navigating their way. And I think overall, I think it ended up being a fairly positive experience, much better than most have expected. And I think that the workforce has proven to the management that they're conscientious, that they are invested in their work, and that they are productive despite all these challenging aspects of remote work that was not pre-planned.
Thank you. I think very impactfully put, because I am going to come to you with the whole concept of remote work. Dragna, I think what we've learned and what we are now experiencing is this whole concept of the distributed workspace, or the decomposition of everything that we used to call the geographical workplace, that perhaps today doesn't exist except theoretically. How much of that do you think is perhaps going to be a natural catalyst for emerging concepts of the future of work by itself? And when I kind of, from an analyst's perspective, look at the future of work, I look at culture at one end. And if I were to look at it in a three-pronged manner, there's culture, there's the workspace or the workplace, and of course, there's the workforce. All three of them have somehow got decomposed in ways that we never imagined. What's your view on that?
Well, that's an interesting point you're making. Actually, Michael Dell sent us a note saying, we have all realized that work is not a time or a place, but an outcome. And that's exactly what it is. It's not even an activity. It's what you're trying to achieve and how you get there. And obviously, people will be more productive given the favorable conditions, having ability really to engage with their work at the time and in a way that they prefer. Because obviously there are specific personal preferences for different technologies, different locations, different times even. I know that I personally like to work later at night when I have to create something because it's quiet, there's no IMs coming in, there's no emails distracting me. I can actually really focus and get my stuff done. So having that flexibility and freedom, I think, is something that's quite valuable. And it's going to take some time for people who are not used to that to readjust and really kind of also condition people around them, like their families or even their boss, to this new engagement model. But I think all of that, like you astutely pointed out, is all kind of blending together. Like culture is a big enabler of this, and change management is a big enabler of this. And having the tools that are secure enough to use anywhere, because again, it doesn't mean that you're going to be working from home. You may find yourself very inspired to work from a coffee shop down the street, or from your own, I don't know, from your neighbor's backyard. I don't know, maybe they have a pool, you don't have a pool. I don't know. But whatever works, the key point is that we're getting what we need to get done, completed, and that we have a way to collaborate with those that help us be productive. So that's really, I think, the net of what we're striving for. And of course, for companies, as they're making investments, for these investments to show a return, is for people to adopt whatever is intended for their productivity. So if we give them new technology, we want them to adopt it and use it as it was intended. If we have a new work model, we have to make sure that everybody engaged in that work model understands what it is and understands the terms of engagement. And then, of course, as with every change, you have to reward the positive behaviors for majority, the first ones who adopted, and then you have to take away the old way of doing things so that people don't fall back into their comfort zone, right? So it is a big, I think, we as a human race are now facing big changes to our lifestyles, to our work styles. And that all is kind of going hand in hand with a lot of opportunity, but also some challenge too.
And I couldn't have put that better, because Dragna, I'm going to come to you with a very important question, a raging debate really, but the whole concept of productivity. Whether these are large conversations or smaller ones, the whole concept of productivity in these reimagined realities continues to, well, pretty much rage across the world. But I think, if I may be allowed to point out, is that productivity is also a factor of experience.
Yeah.
And experience, therefore, is something that is very personal to me. In that, I'm going to bring this down to the infrastructure layer by saying, how important do you think the device is to really do everything that you said? And like Michael Dell has beautifully put it, I've written this down, is work is an outcome. It cannot be a journey. It's got to be a destination of sorts. Of course, there'll be multiple factors to the journey. But really, where I sit down, wherever I could, and the moment I boot up, I'm on. How important is that experience related to productivity? And therefore, what role do you think the device plays in it?
Wow, that's a big question also. So devices are definitely important. I think, especially because the same devices tend to be used for personal productivity as well as work productivity. And so allowing your employees to use devices they're accustomed to is quite good. Also making sure you invest in devices that are future ready. So for example, with immersive technologies like AR, VR coming online, are these devices going to be able to handle that? Do you offer people a family of devices, for lack of a better word, where they can have a similar experience across them. So they don't have to relearn how to do something on their PC versus how to they do that on their handheld device. And so having that consistency, I think, enables continuity and flow in the productivity. I think another thing that has to be considered is collaboration tools as well, and not having too many of them, because if you have people being bombarded from different angles, I mean, actually at one point recently, I was exposed to so many messaging apps and platforms. And I knew a colleague of mine sent me something, and I spent half an hour literally searching all my messages from these various sources to figure out where she sent me the link for what I was asking for. So that is not very productive. So thinking through devices and as well as the productivity applications that go on them is really essential to making sure that everybody has what they need in their preferred way, for hopefully, right? I mean, of course, at Dell, we talk a lot about personas. And we have found in our studies of our own company as well as our customer companies that on average, large MNC will have about 7 personas. That doesn't go to say that some companies may not have 3 or have 10, but on average, you're anywhere between 5 to 7 personas that need specific devices, that need specific applications, specific security considerations, and all that. And then offering that up to them, like to everybody, offering them what they need will inadvertently contribute to the productivity. It's just a must. So having devices, for example, at Dell, we actually even build our portfolio around the personas that we have identified so that it's easier for the buyers, whether they're from IT or HR, whoever is taking care of end user devices, that they don't have to think too much. They can just basically look at the portfolio and say, okay, well, these are my personas. These are type of devices that they will most likely need. And it'll just be very easy to then also have these people engage with these devices and adopt them so that their return on the investment is good.
Very, very interesting, because which brings me to the whole question of collaboration and innovation. I'm presuming, and I know for a fact, are meeting, well, at least virtually meeting in the current context, tons of enterprises, tons of organizations. How really, in your estimate, so this is going to be a two-part question, how really, in your observation, are, from a future of work perspective or reimagined workspaces perspective, how do you see organizations kind of navigating the whole concept of productivity, which is just apart from just the tools of productivity, but productive collaboration in its truest sense, and the whole concept of innovation? That's number one. And number two is, therefore, when you see that, what do you take back and say, look, I've observed all of this, but this is my guidance to industry. Navigate this journey in this broad fashioned manner. What's your view, Dragoner?
Wow, okay, big question again. Two big questions. So in terms of what it means to be productive versus be innovative, sometimes you can be very productive and not super innovative at all. And so I think it's important for established companies to understand how the productivity is going versus how innovation is going. And again, of course, everybody has to innovate these days, because we know that there are many, many new industry entrants that are challenging, that are very quickly, almost overnight, becoming industry leaders. So instead of being in a defensive mode, it's always good to be an innovator and the one who's challenging others. So it's important to keep an eye on that goal as well. And again, people usually innovate in groups, right? Like it's few innovative things come from like one person's idea, and you need a whole team, even if one person comes up with one idea, to refine that idea and actually move it forward. So having that collaborative setup, for lack of a better word, and this is something that takes us back to what's the office of the future? What is the technology of the future? How are we going to facilitate this? What is gig economy going to do for us? Like the distributed ledgers, right? I mean, when that becomes more mainstream, and when eventually tax laws and legislations of various countries catch up to technological changes, are we going to have an infinite talent pool around the globe versus our own country talent pool, right? And how is that going to be affected? So we go from very like sort of micro, what is our office going to look like, to what is our workforce going to be like? Is this somebody I can hire from the other side of the globe? And how do I then collaborate with them in an innovative way when we're 12 hours apart in a time zone? And so looking at all of that is quite important. And again, I don't think it's something IT alone should be thinking about and addressing. I think this is something HR needs to think very heavily about. I think we need to understand that artificial intelligence is going to be a big helper in the future to all of us, and how do we leverage artificial intelligence not as a competitor, but as a strong collaborator and supporter of human work. And then looking at, for example, these spaces, how do we not just look at the configuration within our office, but how do we enable that office to become a smart office? How does that office respond to people inside of it to facilitate their productivity? Are we going to have offices that are maybe one big, not big, but probably smaller than what we're used to now, having a central office that's really configured for teamwork and customer engagement and collaboration, and then have a number of these sort of satellite spaces through shared workspaces that people can go to and do heads down work with maybe another colleague, so this other colleague doesn't have to come to their house, or they don't have to discuss sensitive information in a coffee shop, or even if they just need individual productivity pod, they can get it somewhere near their home instead of commuting all the way far away to the central office. So I think these distributed workspaces will definitely become a thing. I think smart places will become a thing, having smart meeting rooms that know who is in the room and automatically pulls up whatever collaborative software is required to pull in virtual participants of the meeting, allowing them all to perhaps collaborate through touch screens as whiteboards, and then capture all of that together with transcript of the conversation that the perhaps meeting organizer can share. I don't think that's too far away. I think that technology exists, just needs to be integrated in a specific way. And for example, we make large displays. We make these smart projectors and smart boards, which can all be integrated into a smart space like this and enable that whole next level of immersive collaborative experience. And I'm not even talking AR and VR, which is also coming down the road. Yes, but soon, not too far away, actually. There's some interesting use cases that have emerged now because of COVID, because of the need for contactless, like for example, doctors have these smart glasses that they can pull up health records, getting the exact information that you need without too much hand engagement, where you can spread the germs and things like that.
Very interesting, because I do come to a very important question, which I think is very relevant and contextual from today's perspective, really, Dragna, which is, and I speak on behalf of this wonderful audience that's listening and tuning into us today, of IT leaders and CIOs, is this whole concept of technology being the enabler, I think, has been established. But I think one of the things that we've also been advising organizations, by and large, is to focus on device modernization, because there exists a real case for device modernization to kind of lead to superior business outcomes that the enterprise or the organization can kind of craft and orchestrate. How would you, in your experience and speaking on behalf of Dell, kind of either emphasize that or reiterate that? What's your view on this? What is your guidance?
Right. Well, device modernization is important because you can have very old devices that are not configured for specific new technologies that are being designed for this new immersive collaboration, right? Like, we have to keep up with that. Also, having people with radically different devices who are trying to collaborate becomes much more difficult, right? If I can run something and you can run it and we're trying to work in that virtual mode together, that won't be a very successful or satisfying experience. So that is definitely a key element of keeping an eye on what people need within your organization, and keeping with times, and because it's not just people within the organization that are collaborating. There's a number of collaborations happening outside of the IT spec. It's happening with partners, it's happening with customers. People are doing a lot more joint initiatives outside of the company. So all of that requires a very frequent reevaluation of what our organization needs. We can't choose something and wait 3-4 years down the road like we had in the past. You had these like refresh PC cycles that were 4 years long. That is just not really something that is conducive to companies progression and leadership. Like, it's really, technology is becoming so important and such a critical enabler that keeping something too long is almost a risk.
Indeed. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Because, Dragana, I do have a view on the clock, but I do have time to sneak in one question before we go live, in terms of go to the audience and kind of ask them to pose their questions to you. And I'm sure we'll have a few interesting ones. But Dragana, Bira, I must ask you this. If you were to use the last 6 months as the benchmark, two questions really. Leveraging the last 6 months as the benchmark, what is your maybe 1 or 2 top predictions for the future of work?
I think the potential is immense. It really is. And one of the big obstacles to remote work, I mean, I've been in this area for the past, since 2008, so like 12 years, long time, talking about unified communications, talking about mobility, future of work. And a lot of people were interested, but they were not buying. They were basically, oh, no, like it's interesting vision you have of this like sci-fi future for us, but that's not possible. It's not going to happen. How can I trust my employee that if they're at home, they're actually working and they're not sitting on a couch, watching Netflix and eating chocolates? And literally, I've been told that. And so I think that mindset has just been blown away completely. I think that nobody who has any concern about what other people think about them would actually voice that out loud anymore. Now the big conversations are like, how do we decide what makes sense for whom? We understand that different roles are different. We understand that a security guard will probably have to be on site, or a receptionist. Even that could perhaps get changed with technology a little bit in the future, but there are certain roles that require you to be on site. And how do we facilitate those people to be the most effective and to be healthy and to be engaged in the right way? And how do we allow others to be more free and more creative and more innovative? And how do we basically re-envision this new future of what our organization is going to look like, what our workplace is going to look like, what our program is going to look like? That is going to be in the near future, a very real thing. Now, looking a little further into the future, I think technologies like immersive technologies, like artificial intelligence, is enabling us to interact with compute in a whole new way. I mean, in the last 30 years, we all became excellent typists because the only way for us to interface with our digital parallel universe that we created was through a keyboard. And then we got styluses and touch screens. And now we do a lot more voice to text. And we have also more of a gesture and eye tracking style interaction. So that is all going to move from the gaming realm into the enterprise. And to facilitate that natural user interface interaction with compute, what is really fostering that is actually artificial intelligence. We're using artificial intelligence algorithms to train technology to recognize our natural way of interacting. We're going to have AI assistants who are going to be helping us. So looking at a workforce that is comfortable with that change, that is embracing artificial intelligence assistance, that is actually okay with doing things the new way. Those are, I think, some of the key elements that organizations need to focus on, and start conditioning people that if I give you this today, doesn't mean that it's going to be something you're going to be working on 6 months from now, because something better and new is going to come along. And I'm here to make you more productive, to make you your
Indeed.
experience better, right?
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And my last question, really, Dragana Bira, getting to know the lady behind the technology and beyond the technology. What's been your single biggest learning over the last 6, 7 months that's going to stay with you for a long, long time to come? It could be personal, it could be professional.
The single biggest learning, I think the fact that my children, as much as I love them, I don't like to spend 24/7 with the time. That's probably a great learning.
I can completely understand that. I've got a 5-year-old, so I do get the drift. But that was lovely. Thank you so much, Ragnar. Just stay around because we are now going into the audience to take questions. I'm just looking at the questions. I've got Anish Chandra. He hasn't mentioned his designation or his organization, but Ragnar, his question to you really is an interesting one, which is in all of this, the future of workplace, the future of workforce, the future of humans is equally important. And the future of humans is kind of centrally pivoted around mental health, well-being, our ability to have fun, and so on and so forth. So his question is, how important is that? Because it is perhaps the most important question of our day.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you're burnt out and mentally and physically cannot engage anymore, that's not good for anyone. And I think people who are very passionate, people who are happy, who feel at ease with their life, they're going to take that energy into their work as well. So as such, we at Dell have had some really incredible wellness programs rolled out over the last 6 months to foster the employee morale and mental health, as well as physical health. We actually have a number of the platforms for steps tracking, virtual dance competitions, joint, we did, my team is in the US. And so our time zones are 12 hours off. So at 5:15 on Friday morning, my time, they do happy hour, which
Wow.
I don't participate in. And they also have rolled out a heat training session through Zoom at 11 p.m. Friday, my time too. So I'm not a great team player on that, but I try and compensate during some of the other kind of meeting times and build that relationship. But it is really, really important to also use technologies that can help with that mental health fostering. And I think as the software industry evolves, there will be that AI built in to help us remain focused and remain engaged so that we're not too distracted with all these emails coming in and different, because that's one of the really enemies of our well-being, is that sometimes we just get too scattered, and that puts an immense mental strain on people. So helping people stay focused, helping people keep focus on what is the most important thing for their outcome from the work standpoint will actually aid to their well-being, so they discard the noise and can really focus well.
I find very interesting because when I was moderating the previous session with Vikas Majumdar, we got a very interesting question from the audience, Ragnar. I'm going to take that to you also. That came to me on LinkedIn at that point in time. Is in a geographical space, in a workplace as we were traditionally used to, we had a regimentation that was put into place. 9 o'clock work, or as the case may be, 6:30 odd, you kind of get done and then you head home. But over the last 6-7 months, it's just been one cyclical loop. Wherever you are now, your day starts at perhaps 8 on certain days, or like 5:15, like you said, and it could continue till about 11 o'clock because you don't have anywhere to get to. In that kind of a scenario, Dragana, the question that had come in the previous segment is this: is it important and imperative that we actually put a regimentation in place, or should we just go with the flow?
Well, there's different people right out there. I'm not a routine person. I actually suffer when I'm exposed to a repetitive routine. Other people find comfort in routine. So I think different individuals will need to have some self-awareness and find a way for themselves. But I mean, even for me, that I don't like the routine, I will not sit at my desk continually from early morning until late at night. Because I do have late night calls, and I also sometimes have early morning calls, but middle of the day, I'll just say, okay, fine, I'm going to get on my bike and just go for an hour bike ride, or go for a workout, or go meet a friend for lunch. Or I think it's really, really important to break up that, like you say, loop, and
Monotony
really
of
take some
sorts.
time for yourself. Or like, no, okay, my kids are back from school at 4:30. They will be available for us to spend some time to go. Now they're teens, so they don't really care, but I care. So I'll go and chase them around the house, probably sometime between 5 and 8. But then I'll be back online when they start getting ready to go to bed. So it's just one of those things that I think everybody needs to really take some ownership for their schedule, and take ownership as we take ownership for our deliverables. I think now we can't really rely on a company to tell us what is our schedule, but we actually set our own schedule, and try and make it work for ourselves.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, folks. That's pretty much all we have time for question answers. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment. But Dragana, that was nothing short of brilliant. Thank you. It was my privilege, and we are delighted to have had you in dialogue with us. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Arjun. My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back in a jiffy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for you to stay tuned for segment 3, where we will be in conversation with leaders from the tech vendor community to understand how they are powering innovation for business across industry verticals.
Hello and welcome back. I am Arjun Vishwanathan, your host and the Chief Research Officer at Strategink. In this segment, we're going to be in conversation to fundamentally try and understand how OEMs and technology partners are truly partnering industry in leading the change to transformation and focusing equally on helping enterprises navigate a complex journey that lies ahead. And joining me in conversation is Saji Kumar, Director, M&A Alliances, Microsoft. Saji, welcome. Delighted you could be with us.
Thank you, Arjun, and thank you, Dell team. Extremely pleased and excited to be part of this wonderful conversation. Looking forward.
Thank you. Saji, I'm going to directly jump into it. Now, this whole 6 months that we've kind of gone through is necessitating a very radical change of concepts, a radical change of thinking. Now, when you kind of look at it from that perspective, how, in your estimate, are you at Microsoft and in this collaborative venture with Dell and the other folks helping and empowering industries, organizations, enterprises to drive true innovation? What's your view on that?
Yeah, good question, Arjun. Let me start with the statement our CEO, Satya Nadella, made maybe a couple of months ago in one of the forums. He said, 2 years of digital transformation happened in just 2 months during this pandemic time. It was very unprecedented. We never expected the entire outlook of the world itself changed, not just the IT industry. If you look at overall the way we look at things, way you approach certain things, whether it's in your professional or personal life, a lot of changes have happened. And we have seen a drastic change in the way digital transformation has happened in our industry. Today, customers are looking at getting the best experience out of when they're doing a remote working, right? How can we get the best productivity, best in terms of the efficiency, best in terms of speed, etc., etc. The new generation is shifting their expectations where employees really care about the tech in the workspace. 90% of the millennials say a company's tech sophistication would impact decision to work there. It's a fact. Productivity and profitability, we all know, is directly linked to employee satisfaction. The users demand the best tools to get things done. That's when companies like Microsoft, in partnership with Dell, bring in the best of the solutions for the customers. The industry no more respects tradition. We respect only innovation. So coming back to your question about what are the things we bring into the table, this partnership. Today, we need collaboration tools for remote access. We need devices security and also digital transformation. These are the three top of the mind thinkings when we look about the new way of working. So whether it's the Windows 10 Pro operating system on a Dell modern device or the Microsoft 365, we can definitely address all these parameters, working more securely, reducing the cost, increasing the productivity, and also improving the performance.
Interesting, because, and I quite like what you said, and I'm going to request you to stick to that, because I'm going to pick out a sentence that you made where you had mentioned the whole concept of the empowerment of employees. And in the same breath, you also spoke about revenue profitability. Now, my question to you, Saji, is really about the whole concept of empowerment of employees is equally about experience. So while enterprises really are driving experience at one end and empowerment, their standard KPIs also continue to remain the whole concept of revenue, profitability, the business outcomes. How do you help organizations kind of seamlessly navigate both the journeys simultaneously?
See, if you look at Microsoft, the vision itself is empower each and every organization on the planet to achieve more. That's a basic theory or basic principle by which we look at our products or innovation when it comes to Microsoft. Say, for example, empowering employees. Microsoft product helps unlocks creativity by empowering people to express their ideas more effectively by sparking innovation. I'll talk about an example of Microsoft 365 as a product. It provides the tools for creators to do their best of the work, whether you're drafting a business plan or crunching some numbers for a sales report or even building a predictive model for a game design. Our tools are backed by artificial intelligence and machine learning, empowering people to do things they could never do on their own, because now they have the intelligence services working for them at the back. It enables their creativity. It helps in automating the task, surfacing more insights, and also connecting activities and experiences across any device. Because today, you don't work on a single platform. You don't work from the same office space. You don't work as an individual. You need to collaborate between devices, between applications, between platforms, and between locations also. So that is where our products help employees empower themselves.
So, therefore, which brings me to another very important question. Sachi, now we are all aware that in a global as well as an Indian situation of sorts, our workforce really is in a fairly distributed manner, and it continues to kind of operate and work. Now, the whole concept of, and I speak on behalf of the audience, CIOs, IT leaders who actually have this thought in their mind, is how important is device modernization by itself or device transformation by itself in helping enterprises as well as the workforce achieve their goals in a much more superior fashion?
See, the intelligent edge, or to put it simply, the devices become the center of everything, right? That becomes the center of your experience. Whether artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, these are not just buzzwords, right? It needs more efficient hardware, robust software, more computing power, as well as an explosion in sensor data from the Internet of Things. So if you need to achieve all these things, you need the best of the devices which can give best of the experience for an employee, right? Thereby, he gets to work without any interruptions in between. He is able to collaborate with the other people in the organization. See, I would like to cut it into four buckets, right? What are the four things you look at as an employee, right? When you're working in an organization. One is achieving more together. It's our industry is no more achieving as an individual. How do you achieve more together? And second, we call it anywhere it matters. It doesn't matter, you access your work securely from anywhere. Even if you don't have a proper Wi-Fi connection, there is no problem. You can work offline and sync it later. These are the features available on our products, right? Always on security, the most important parameter. You have to safeguard your company's data across, whether you are on a smartphone, you're on a tablet, you're on a PC. You have to help protect your data against phishing and other security threats. You can be rest assured you will be secured with the latest versions of Windows 10 or Office 365. Last but not the least is simplification of business. It's an easy setup which every employee is looking for. You don't have time to go and sit with your IT guy for hours together to get your device plugged onto a particular, network. It has to be a plug and play kind of thing. So all these things which I talk about, achieving more together, anywhere it matters, always on security and simplification of business, all these things will be provided when it comes to Microsoft as a solution provider or the leading industry player.
Very powerfully articulated, Saji. But I do have a view on the clock, and I do realize you have a hard stop in a short while. But I must come to you in this collaboration that you have going with Dell, where you're powering innovation, and therefore empowering organizations to do that much more. What is your view, along with Dell, on the whole concepts of the future of work and the future of the workplace, really?
See, Dell and Microsoft enjoys 4 decades of partnership globally as well as in the country. We have a very strong momentum built within the country itself, whether it's addressing a consumer, whether it's addressing a commercial customer or even a large enterprise customer. We have a well-defined strategy to address the end customer space, irrespective of the vertical. Maybe I will touch upon a couple of vertical just for a discussion sake. You look at financial services. What are the organizations looking for today? They need to deliver innovative, personalized wealth management experiences without sacrificing on security. Who can they approach? They can go with a Dell Microsoft solution. Look at manufacturing as a vertical. The customers are seeking to help employees be more mobile, more collaborative, and at the same time more creative. So without sacrificing the trust on security or without compromising in any of these parameters, there is definitely the solution coming in from the Dell Microsoft Alliance.
Good. I think you made a very right point about the whole concept of the alliance coming together to power more. And I quite like that. But Saji, that pretty much is what we have time for. But I must ask you one very important question for the audience also is, as we come out of perhaps the world's largest ever lockdown and so on, what is from Microsoft's perspective, your essential guidance to IT practitioners, senior IT leaders, and many other folks in the industry on how they should view everything that has been traditional and everything that is going to be reimagined in a new set of realities? And how do you want them to drive and navigate this journey to superior business outcomes?
A very, very valid question, Arjun, before we conclude. Microsoft would like to look at it in 3 ways: response, recovery, and reimagination. We all responded to the pandemic. Maybe you can even call it as a knee-jerk reaction, which is by simply responding to the immediate impact, what we have seen. Second is the recovery phase, which we all gone through in the last 4 to 5 months. Right? That's also uh, passed by now. Now is the most important phase, which is reimagination, a period in which innovations born of necessity during the previous 2 phases will emerge. I will just give you a simple example. I was speaking to one of the SMB customers in Delhi. They're into manufacturing garments. He said that I had to immediately change the way I look at things. I started looking outside the box. I spoke to various governments, even inside and outside the country. Today, I'm tied up with one of the governments in the Middle East who was supplying PPE kits to that region. He would have never thought about this opportunity earlier in his, regular business rhythm, unless this pandemic has hit him.
So true.
Which means he is definitely converting the crisis into an opportunity. So whoever has the resilience, whoever has the agility and speed to address this and convert this crisis into an opportunity will certainly be the future winners.
Thank you, Saji. Folks, that was none other than Saji Kumar, Director M&A Alliances, Microsoft, in conversation with me. Saji, it was a privilege to have had you with us in dialogue. Thank you so much for taking out time.
Thank you, Arjun. Really appreciate it. It was wonderful talking with you.
Thank you so much. For the audience, stay tuned. We'll be back in a short time.
Devices at the speed of thought. Key takeaways. This episode will focus on 5 considerations while choosing an endpoint device, as these items take up a significant portion of corporate IT budgets. First, shortlist the most important range of features that your business uses regularly. Mobility or portability, common applications to be used by most workers or executives. Battery life, embedded AI ML capabilities, processor clock speed, storage capacity, security features, and budget, etc. Here are the 5 key considerations summarized for you. Mobility is a key consideration to allow a remote workforce to access files or data and work from anywhere and respond in a nimble fashion. This means that you may have to choose laptops over desktops, check for weight, screen size, touchscreen, 2-in-1, battery life, and preloaded OS or applications. Verify compatibility with latest AI ML tools. Speed and performance. The more CPU processing power available, the faster your computer or hardware device can work, allowing you to complete more complicated tasks and handle larger workloads. Storage capacity. Storage and memory describe the amount of information that a device can store for you to access and use. Storage is needed for basic documents and photos to complicated programs and applications and can impact device performance. Storage and speed often go hand in hand. Cloud storage options and external drives help you supplement storage on your main computing devices. Security. Prefer inbuilt security features from reputed OEMs that are invested deeply in R&D and promoting ethical business practices. Budget is an important consideration for any business, but don't just hunt for the lowest price. First, evaluate the needs listed above, then opt for the best value within that set of qualifications. Be sure to do your research and buy from a reputable brand with great product innovation and warranty or after-sales support, so your investment is protected. Stay tuned, folks. Our next episode features eminent industry speakers and subject matter experts discussing endpoint security, defending against the unknown. Airs September 18th, 2020.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with all the informative sessions for today, we come to an end. But we will be back with episode 3 on September 18th, 2020 at 11 a.m. In episode 3, we will focus on how organizations have shifted from traditional mindsets of threat detection and prevention to active threat detection and rapid preemptive response. We will try to understand how a new breed of security solutions are enabling inbuilt comprehensive threat management while rapidly scaling IT infrastructure with enhanced features that offer sustained competitive advantage. With that, I would request each one of you to kindly please give your feedback and recommendations to us, because it is extremely important for us to improve our future events that we bring to you. Kindly fill the feedback form with your business mail ID, and our team will mail you a complimentary copy of a very useful strategic action checklist on today's webinar episode theme and topics. With that, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in episode 3.